I am so excited to open this box. And I'm sure the title and thumbnail already spoiled it, but I am going to open this up, show you everything inside. By the time this video goes live, there will be a live stream scheduled for 1 week from now, next weekend. And in that stream, we are going to launch the brushes live for sale, just like we did with my other brush set. I'll show you everything in detail, we'll answer questions, and I'll probably do some painting. It'll be a fun time. So save the date for that. The link is in the description, everything's in the description. But for now, let's dive in and see what's inside. Let's take a look at what's inside. The first thing you'll notice is a large print on the back of which is some information about brush care and the collaboration. And then underneath that, we have a custom carrying case, which you can fit lots of stuff in. I'll show you later. But the outside is covered in one of my gouache paintings. And then, of course, we come to the brushes. There are 8 specially designed travel brushes, and I'm going to show you what each one looks like and what I like to use them for. But I also have to take a minute to appreciate the quality of the box itself. This little collector's box features my artwork on the cover as well as the art card inside. The print quality is super high. It almost looks like the original gouache painting. And then there's some sketches in the inside cover, which is super cool. I wanted to curate a set of brushes that were really versatile and feature a lot of my favorite types and sizes, especially because I like to paint with both watercolor and gouache. And I think I've chosen the best of both worlds. We have some rounds and some flats, so let's take a closer look at each one. I chose to include a filbert brush because I've been using these more and more in the studio. I've never really used them outside, so I've been experimenting with that and loving it. We have a few round brushes. We have this little number 6 baby brush, which is perfect for little details. A medium size number 8 round, which I kind of do in between medium and larger details. And then we have our largest round, the number 12, which is big and juicy. This holds a lot of water, but also has a fine point for details. And then we have a few flat brushes, which are very long and soft, just like I love in the studio. They're not very common for travel brushes, so I was really excited to include these. The reason I like long, soft hairs is to be able to very gently layer gouache on top of other layers of gouache, which I'll show you later. The great thing about the skinniest flat brush I included is that it also can act as a rigger brush for really tiny, fine lines. And then we have a mid-size and a large flat, which I do the majority of my layers with. And lastly, we have this little cutie, which I lovingly named Shorty because the hairs are slightly shorter and a little bit stiffer. So you can really dig into the paint and scrub it into the paper, and it holds its shape a little bit better for all sorts of other techniques that I like. I tend to use round brushes more for watercolor. However, I sometimes use them to lay down my initial layer of diluted gouache before moving on to the next layer. Either way, I like to have a brush with lots of hairs that holds lots of water, but having this really fine tip is a huge bonus. You can use this brush for a lot of things. But then it's nice to have a few detail brushes as well. Sometimes I'm working in very tiny sketchbooks or just working small sketches in a big page, and I can't quite get detailed enough with the bigger brushes. That's when I pull out these two. It's also useful for doing those final little details and gouache like foliage or highlights on a branch, all the things that require a little bit more dexterity. The filbert brush is so much fun because it's longer and softer and has a rounded edge. I love it for getting big soft areas or for clouds where I don't necessarily want a hard edge between colors. It's actually turning out to be a pretty versatile brush on its own, so I'm going to be doing lots of experimentation with that this year, and I hope you guys enjoy that in this set. Like I said, the tiniest flat brush is almost like a rigger brush. It's got very long, soft hairs, so you can get tons of little detail. I love this brush for long grasses or little slivers of highlight on water. I usually reserve that brush for the final details in a painting. The number 4 flat brush is the equivalent of my beloved 1/4 inch flat brush that I use in the studio all the time. It's one of my most used brushes. I like it for sketching my initial layout and composition before I start painting, but it also can hold lots of water and paint. The number 6 flat is my large flat in the set, and it holds more paint, more water, allows me to fill in the bigger areas in the painting. I'm usually using this one or the filbert one first. And lastly, the shorty is my little workhorse flat. It's great for doing lots of little hard edges or really scrubbing the paint or lots of dry brush textures. If you've been watching my gouache techniques over the years, you know that I usually like to start with a diluted layer of gouache and then let that dry before I move on to my next layer, because dry brush texture has become one of my main techniques. These long, soft hairs will flex as you press them down onto the paper, so they won't reactivate the paint underneath as much. Of course, if you scrub it, they will, but they allow me to gently layer gouache on top of itself without worrying about getting muddy layers quite as easily. So if you already own some travel brushes, these might be a great way to fill out the rest of your set so that you can do even more techniques when you're outside. Before I show you the little bag that comes with the set, I want to quickly show you how I clean my brushes at the end of a session when I get home from painting. I'll usually use a little bit of brush soap just to get the rest of the paint out, because I often don't do a great job with cleaning them when I'm outside. I'll usually scrub them very gently with the brush soap, and then I'll dry them flat on a table, usually on a cloth of some kind. I'll also use it as an opportunity to reshape the brush hairs before I let them dry so that they're fresh and ready to go next time. I also want to address one of the things that has always kind of annoyed me about travel brushes. Most travel brushes are made with metal casings and are a little bit slippery and roll very easily. Mine are no exception. So I'll show you what I've done with my travel brushes over the years that works really well. What I do is wrap the end with a little bit of washi tape or painter's tape, whatever I have lying around, and I create these little flags. And I use it as an opportunity to write the name of the brush or whatever abbreviation I give it, just to be able to see a little bit easier when I'm digging around in my bag. It just makes the process a little bit quicker and easier. So I hope that little tip helps you. I also want to mention that the box that the set comes in is pretty rugged, so it actually is great for storing some paintings. I always have paintings lying around the studio that I still need to photograph, so I'm keeping them in the box so that I know that those are the ones I need to photograph before I store them away properly. And lastly, I want to show you how I use the little bag that comes with the set, which I still am so excited about because that was one of my favorite gouache paintings over the last few years. And when I get ready to go out and paint, I'm trying to pack minimal. What I do is wrap my travel brushes in a cloth or whatever I'm using outside to absorb the water. And I usually just put a hair tie around it to keep them secure. And I requested that the bag be long enough to hold my favorite markers, which are the long Tombow dual brush pens. They're my favorites for doing little value studies. And of course I can fit a couple other things like a little spray bottle or a tiny water cup and some tape if I need that. However, with the large markers in the bag, my larger portable painter doesn't fit. So if I am insisting on carrying my markers, I will use my portable painter micro, which is my little pocket painting kit. It fits perfectly with all of these accessories. And then all that's left to do is to go out and paint. And that's easier said than done in the winter in Scotland, but I've made an effort, and it's coming up on Plein April, which is an event I partake in every year where I paint outside every day during April. So you are going to see these brushes in action all throughout April. I am so excited to get out there and paint. I'm going to brave the weather no matter what comes my way. So I will see you all next week for the live launch of these brushes. I'm so excited. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I'll see you all soon. Take care.